All right, now picture this with me. Astral Chain, one of the top 10 greatest games of all time on the Nintendo Switch. The game already looked amazing and ran great and just had some of the best combat that you could hope to get your hands on. But now imagine that game enhanced, upscale with a much better image quality, say to 4K, and double the frame rate, locked in at a buttery smooth 60 frames per second. And that, my friends, is one of 10 perfect Nintendo Switch 2 editions that we absolutely must see on the Nintendo Switch 2. What are the other 9? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. What's up, everyone? This is Justin, and welcome to Just Keep Playing. Please join me today as we talk about 10 perfect games to be enhanced or have a Nintendo Switch 2 edition. Enhanced backwards compatibility has been one of the best things about the Nintendo Switch 2 since its launch. Being able to play games from one of the greatest gaming console libraries of all time, with those games looking, playing, and feeling better than they ever have, has been absolutely amazing. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet finally are running like real games and being played the way that they should have been played from the very beginning. Being able to experience the Zeldas, both the big open world games, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and the recent Echoes of Wisdom, being able to play those games looking better than they've ever looked and just feeling and playing better than they've ever played has been a dream come true. And then with the enhanced features has just been really cool, with just like the Zelda notes, making it just so much more just a better experience, with like finding all those Koroks and being able to share your creations in Tears of the Kingdom, and the updates to games like Mario Odyssey. It's just been so much fun to just dive back into our back catalogs and just re-experience some of the classics from the original Nintendo Switch, but experience them at a whole new level thanks to the Nintendo Switch 2. And with the rumored Nintendo Direct potentially coming up soon, we should be finding out about the next batch of enhanced Switch games and Switch 2 editions. We already talked about Astral Chain, but there are 9 other games that are absolutely perfect and just waiting to be enhanced or have a Switch 2 edition. So we already started things off with Astral Chain. So we'll kick the rest of this list off with its game that goes hand in hand with Astral Chain, and that is Bayonetta 3. Now, the original Bayonetta 3 on the original Switch, to me, that was already a great game. It played great, but it definitely had some issues. It was a really ambitious game, and it was absolutely pushing the Nintendo Switch to its limits. Now, Platinum Games, they are the masters when it comes to action games, and you often do get that just buttery smooth action with them. But in Bayonetta 3, with all the transformations, some of these most incredible action set pieces in gaming period, it was hard for the original Switch to keep up. Sometimes it did a good job as much as it could, but imagine a Switch 2 edition. They've already shown that with like games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom that they could double the frame rate, and with Metroid Prime 4 coming up, they even got it going up to 120 frames per second. So imagine an action game like Bayonetta 3 taking that to just a locked in 60 frames, or even taking it to the next level with 120, and that would just be some of the greatest action that we could ever get our hands on. And I, for one, would absolutely love to see that on the Nintendo Switch 2, and it would just be really cool for that game to get even just another chance, a second chance at life, to get the props that it deserves. But are you a fan of Bayonetta 3, and are you excited for a potential Nintendo Switch 2 or just some enhancements for the Nintendo Switch 2 to Bayonetta 3? Let me know in the comments. And if you've been loving the backwards compatibility on the Nintendo Switch 2, and if you're excited for more potential Nintendo Switch 2 additions, please hit that like and subscribe button and join me for more gaming, Nintendo, and Nintendo Switch 2 discussion. All right, let's get to the next game. And next up, we have The Witcher 3. CD Projekt Red has already shown what they can do on the Nintendo Switch 2 with Cyberpunk, one of the breakout, standout third-party games on the Nintendo Switch 2 so far. And back on the original Switch, The Witcher 3 was one of the quintessential impossible ports that people really wanted, but not too many thought was actually possible, but they did it. And it was a good version. Yes, it was not the prettiest thing to look at, but at the time it was the best and only way that you could really play The Witcher 3 portably, that you could play it handheld. But now with the Nintendo Switch 2, they can take the original Switch version of The Witcher 3 and take it to the next level and bring the game on par with your PS5 or your Xbox Series or PS4 versions of the game, and have a game that looks and plays really good both on the TV and handheld, which is still the thing that the Nintendo Switch 2 does better than any other platform in such a seamless way. But when talking about standout third-party games on the original Nintendo Switch, you have to talk about this next game, and that's Monster Hunter Rise. Now, we don't know when or if Monster Hunter Wilds is ever going to come to the Switch 2. But in the meantime, an enhanced Nintendo Switch 2 edition for Monster Hunter Rise. And let's go ahead and just add that expansion onto there, the Sunrise expansion. Get a Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Monster Hunter Rise and the Sunrise expansion. That would certainly ease the wait for a Switch 2 version of Monster Hunter Wilds, or just a brand new Monster Hunter game on the Nintendo Switch 2. Monster Hunter Rise on the Nintendo Switch already ran great online and made really good use of that feature. But now on the Switch 2, with the focus that Nintendo has put on things like game chat and the camera, being able to use those features with Monster Hunter Rise and playing with your friends, that would be a really cool addition to a Switch 2 edition for Monster Hunter Rise. And while we're at it, you could go ahead again and double up that frame rate, take it from 30 frames per second and push it all the way up to that 60 frames per second. And then you'll have the Monster Hunter Rise on the Switch 2, now on par with the PS4, PS5, Xbox Series versions of the game, again on a platform where you're not locked to the TV, so you can play it both docked and handheld. And that to me makes a great case for Monster Hunter Rise Nintendo Switch 2 edition. But keeping the third-party train going, you can't talk about the standout third-party games on the original Nintendo Switch. You can't talk about the impossible ports without talking about a game from this series, and that is Doom 2016. That, along with Skyrim, those were two of the most important third-party games on the original Nintendo Switch. Those were two third-party games that helped just as much, in my opinion, as a game like Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey. They helped prove the concept of the Nintendo Switch, being able to take these big, huge, major home console style games and being able to play them both on the TV and in your hand. And Doom 2016, that was one of my favorite games from the launch year of the Nintendo Switch. And it was a good version of the game, but yes, it was definitely compromised when you compared it to the PS4 and the Xbox One version of the game. Now, take that Doom 2016 and go ahead and enhance, upscale that bad boy to 4K, 60 frames per second, and then take one of the new standout features from the Switch 2, the mouse mode, and you've got a really cool Nintendo Switch 2 edition and just a good reason to go back and replay and re-experience the Doom 2016 on the Nintendo Switch 2. So we're going to come back to the third-party games here in a little bit, but now we're going to talk about some of these first-party games that would make for some awesome Switch 2 editions. But let me know what third-party games you would like to see a Switch 2 edition of on the Nintendo Switch 2. Let me know in the comments. Now, when it comes to the first-party studios, the studio that I am probably the most excited to see what they are cooking up for the Nintendo Switch 2 is Monolith Soft. Now, I don't know when we'll see the brand new game that they have been cooking up for the Nintendo Switch 2. Hopefully we'll see it soon, but while we wait, it would be so cool to get just a little taste of what they could accomplish on the Nintendo Switch 2 with getting some enhancements to all of the games in the series, bump up the frame rate and the visuals, and now you've got a good reason to go back and experience one of the greatest trilogies in all of gaming and Xenoblade Chronicles X. And there's already been, some people found some enhancements waiting to be unlocked for Xenoblade Chronicles X. So it'd be cool if Nintendo went ahead and just unlocked those enhancements for Xenoblade Chronicles X, give us that 60 frames per second, bump up those visuals, lock in that frame rate, and go ahead and do that for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and 1. But specifically for a Nintendo Switch 2 edition, I'd love to see a Nintendo Switch 2 edition for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 plus Torna. Put them all in one pack, really enhance those games with some of the quality of life features that they learned later on with games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and Xenoblade Chronicles X. And I think that would be really cool and give me a reason to go back and replay Xenoblade Chronicles 2 on the Nintendo Switch 2 plus Torna. Would you go back and play the Xenoblade Chronicles trilogy and Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Nintendo Switch 2 if they were to enhance it or make a Nintendo Switch 2 version of those games? Let me know in the comments. Now, when thinking about the new things that the Nintendo Switch 2 brings to the table and what first-party games could take advantage of those new features, one of the things that immediately comes to mind is the mouse mode, and a game that would really be able to take advantage of that feature is Pikmin 4. Now, it is already rumored by Nash Weedle that supposedly Nintendo is cooking up a Nintendo Switch 2 edition for Pikmin 4, and that supposedly that they are working on a enhanced multiplayer mode for this, maybe some co-op. I think that would be really cool, a really cool addition to Pikmin 4 in addition to a mouse mode for controlling your Pikmin. One of my biggest disappointments with Pikmin 4, and I absolutely love the game, it was one of my favorite games of 2023, but I was disappointed with the multiplayer, specifically with the co-op. Pikmin 3 Deluxe had a co-op mode, and you could play through the entire main game, story mode of the game in co-op, and that was a really cool addition to Pikmin 3 Deluxe on the Nintendo Switch. So when it came to Pikmin 4, I was like really shocked that they didn't include that for Pikmin 4. So if they were to make a Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Pikmin 4 with some mouse control modes in there and with co-op for the main game, or just even have like an additional story mode and you can do that in co-op, that would really give Pikmin fans a reason to go back and play that game and be able to experience it in co-op, to play through the story with their friends, with their spouse, with their siblings, with their significant other. That would just be a really cool enhancement and something that I hope that they do for a Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Pikmin 4. Now, another first-party game that's already been rumored, or it's already been data mined that there were some enhancements waiting to be unlocked for the game, is Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. It was already a bit of a controversy when the game came out and it was discovered that they decided to prioritize the graphics in the game and lock things down to 30 frames per second when the original game on the GameCube ran at a 60 frames per second. So if they were to give fans a Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door and bump that frame rate up to 60 frames per second, just like the original, but go ahead and enhance that to 4K, I think that would be a really cool thing for fans of that game. And then there's also Luigi's story that is just begging to be played. So that would make for a cool addition to a Nintendo Switch 2 edition of the game, to have Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door plus Luigi's story and his adventures in the Waffle Kingdom. Would you be down to play a Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door and see Luigi's story brought to life and being able to play it and not just read about him telling you the story? Let me know in the comments. And coming up, we have one more first-party game that I think would be perfect to take advantage of one of the new features of the Nintendo Switch 2. But before we get to that one, we have one more third-party game to get to, and that game is Mario plus Rabbids 2. Ubisoft has talked about how they were a little disappointed with how the sales turned out for Mario plus Rabbids 2. They told how Nintendo told them that they should wait for the Switch 2 to release the game. That is typically better to do one game per system, but they went ahead and released the game anyway, and it was a good game. It was a lot of fun. Had a really good time with that game, but to give it another chance at life, another chance to reach its potential, go ahead and do a Nintendo Switch 2 edition of that game, packaging in all of the DLC. Maybe go ahead and throw in Mario plus Rabbids 1 as well. Add in mouse control mode for the game. Upscale that to 4K, get that locked in 60 frames per second, and I think fans would jump at the chance to replay that game or to play it for the first time with the Nintendo Switch 2 edition. All right, and next up for the first party games, talking about a game that could take perfect advantage of the mouse mode of the Switch 2, and that game is Fire Emblem 3 Houses. If you want to throw Engage in there as well, you can. but it would be really cool to get a Nintendo Switch 2 edition for Fire Emblem Three Houses. I love the game. Fire Emblem Three Houses is one of the best games on the Nintendo Switch and just one of my favorite games of all time, period. But the game could use some touching up in the image quality, but more importantly than that is the mouse control mode. Playing through Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma on the Nintendo Switch 2, that has truly made me a believer in the mouse mode on the Nintendo Switch 2. Being able to use the Joy-Cons as a mouse for the village building and the farming in that game really took those sections of the game to the next level for me, where maybe normally that style of gameplay I wouldn't truly be into, but using the mouse controls, it was just so intuitive, so smooth and streamlined that trying to do that with the controller just felt so clunky. But while I was doing that and I was seeing the grids there for the village building or for the farming, and it just clicked that that would be perfect for Fire Emblem, for a strategy RPG. So take Fire Emblem Three Houses, already one of the most popular, one of the best Fire Emblem games there is, add in improved visuals, and then enhance the gameplay with mouse mode, being able to move your characters around and select where they want to go and select how you want them to move just with the mouse. Just how much that would just smooth out the gameplay and take it to the next level. That is just, it just sounds like a dream come true, and it's something that would be really exciting to have on the Nintendo Switch 2 for a Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Fire Emblem Three Houses. But what do you think? Would you like to see a Nintendo Switch 2 edition for Fire Emblem Three Houses, or would you prefer Engage? And what other first-party games would you like to see a Nintendo Switch 2 edition for? Let me know in the comments. And thank you so much for watching. And for more games that would make for perfect ports to the Nintendo Switch 2, check out this video right here. And until next time, see you later. Have a good one. Peace.